Before the tiaras, before the tabloid wars, before palace corridors and podcast microphones, multi-million-dollar Netflix contracts, and Instagram-ready activism, there was Meghan Markle. Not the Duchess, not the brand, not the movement, just Meghan. An actress with a dream. A woman navigating the ruthless, airbrushed maze of Hollywood, where beauty gets you in the room, but resilience keeps you in the game. Where rejection is the rule and charm is currency. Where everyone is trying to be somebody and very few ever are. Behind that luminous smile and calibrated charisma was ambition. Sharp, quiet, unrelenting, and standing beside her in those earlier chapters, Trevor Engelson. Not a footnote, not a fling, not a name buried in Wikipedia articles or gossiped about in blind items. Her husband, the man who thought he was co-authoring the love story of a lifetime. It was the mid-2000s, a twilight zone between the analog and digital worlds. Streaming hadn't yet taken over. Social media was embryonic. Influencers didn't exist. Back then, making it still meant pounding pavement, auditioning for guest spots, and crossing fingers. Meghan was in that world, floating between casting calls, side gigs, and brief bursts of screen time. She waitressed, she modeled in briefcases on game shows, she hustled. Trevor was also chasing his own version of the dream, working his way up as a producer. Young, driven, and well-connected, he wasn't the type to chase limelight. He was building power quietly. They met at a time when both were still becoming. They weren't celebrities. They were creatives, dreamers, a pair of hopefuls navigating an industry that eats people alive. They bonded over ambition, over late-night strategy talks, over the mutual ache for relevance. She was magnetic. He was grounded. She brought fire. He brought fuel. Together, they created a kind of synergy. Friends described them as electric but unassuming. They were that couple, the ones everyone rooted for, because they weren't born into privilege. They were carving a path through grit and belief. Trevor believed in Meghan with a sincerity rare in Hollywood. He wasn't just her boyfriend, he was her believer, her bridge, her base. He read her scripts, he gave feedback, he introduced her to decision makers, and supported her during dry spells when roles didn't come. When she created her own content, short films and concepts, he helped produce them. When she got passed over for parts, he helped rebuild her confidence. He wasn't just loving her, he was building her. Everything changed with Suits. It wasn't just a role, it was the role. The breakout moment. The series catapulted her from background noise to primetime presence. She moved to Toronto, her schedule changed, her life changed. The long-distance dynamic became more than an inconvenience. It was a test, and at first, they thought they could ace it. Trevor flew out to see her. He sent care packages, wrote letters, gave her the space she needed to chase her momentum. He was still investing, emotionally and practically. They spoke often. They dreamed of their next chapter. There was talk, real, grounded talk, of Trevor relocating to Toronto. They were a team, and teams adapt. But slowly, the tone shifted. Not with fights, not with drama, just a quiet recalibration, a slow pivot. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Friends didn't notice at first. There weren't tearful confessions or messy public spats. The end came not with an explosion, but with surgical precision. Meghan began to evolve, or perhaps to shed. Her palette changed, her circle changed, her Instagram grid took on a new aesthetic. Her blog, The Tig, became less a diary and more a branding manifesto. Her language sharpened, her tone refined. And somewhere in that evolution, Trevor was left behind. Not loudly, not cruelly, just silently. The calls stopped being returned, the texts got shorter, and then, one day, a padded envelope arrived at Trevor's office. Inside, her wedding ring. No note, no explanation, just a gleam of metal and a chilling finality. Trevor was blindsided. He hadn't just lost a wife, he had been edited out. Efficiently, clinically, like a scene trimmed from a final cut. Time passed. Meghan's star rose, first through her career, then globally through a romance that would eclipse everything before it. Prince Harry. Royal courtships don't often invite exes into the frame. But for Trevor, the headlines weren't just celebrity gossip. They were revelations, personal ruptures, the royal engagement, the wedding at Windsor, the global adoration, and then the pregnancy. That was the moment the air shifted. Because during their marriage, Meghan had allegedly told Trevor that she couldn't have children. Medical complications, biological finality, a quiet heartbreak they had accepted together. Trevor had mourned that possibility. Silently, with grace, with love. He'd recalibrated his dreams of family accordingly. And now, there she was, radiant, cradling her bump on the cover of People. It wasn't jealousy, it was disorientation, a rupture in reality. Was it a miracle? A misdiagnosis? Or had something else been said? Something less honest? Because if that wasn't true, what else hadn't been? As Meghan's public identity sharpened, so did the Whisper Network. Former friends, estranged family, colleagues from her early acting days, the story sounded eerily familiar. She stopped calling. I helped her once, and then I never heard from her again. We were close, until we weren't. The pattern was hard to ignore. Each new chapter in Meghan's life came with a wardrobe change, a tonal shift, a refined ideology, and a new tribe. If you didn't fit the next draft, you were cut. As one Hollywood producer bluntly put it, she doesn't just move forward, she deletes. It wasn't malevolence, it was mechanics. Calculated evolution. Meghan wasn't ascending, she was curating. When whispers of Trevor's story began leaking, Meghan's machine mobilized. It didn't need to be public, it just needed to be managed. Sources say her PR team took swift action. Headlines were softened, journalists were gently nudged, allies were quietly reminded of NDAs and professional courtesy. Damage control wasn't just about image, it was about ownership of the narrative, of the memory, of the Meghan Markle who came before the Duchess. But Trevor wasn't selling stories. He wasn't launching exposés. He was quiet. He was dignified. He was confused. Because his truth didn't seem to matter anymore. And in Meghan's new world, truth was always a matter of perspective. Meghan Markle became a movement. She became a symbol of disruption, of defiance, of dignity in the face of colonialism and racism. She spoke of pain, of being silenced, of surviving systems. To many, she became a hero. To others, a contradiction. She championed mental health, but left emotional wreckage in her wake. She spoke of sisterhood, but old friends say they haven't heard from her in years. She advocated for truth, but behind closed doors, truths were managed, calibrated, reinterpreted. Even Prince Harry, loyal as ever, seemed muted. Was it love, or was it loyalty to a constructed narrative? Who is Meghan Markle? To her fans, she is resilient, compassionate, iconic. To those left behind, she is calculating, selective, unreachable. To Trevor Engelson, she was everything, until she wasn't anything. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. Not the breakup, not the ambition, but the erasure. The feeling that some people weren't just outgrown, they were redacted. Erased not out of cruelty, but convenience. There is nothing wrong with reinvention. In fact, reinvention is power. It's survival, especially for women in Hollywood, especially for women of color, especially in monarchies. But reinvention without reconciliation leaves wreckage, loose ends, ghosts, and people like Trevor Engelson, left wondering if they were ever part of the real script or just a scene in someone else's myth. Because when your story gets deleted, when the person you loved becomes unrecognizable, when the ring comes in the mail without a note, you're not just heartbroken, you're lost. One day, the headlines will stop. The documentaries will fade, the brand deals will shift, the palace gossip will go cold, and in that stillness, perhaps Meghan will look back at the girl she once was, at the people who helped her rise, at the lives she edited out for the sake of a cleaner story. And maybe then she'll wonder, what does it cost to be unforgettable, if it means forgetting everyone else? Because when the spotlight fades, who's left holding the script? And who, if anyone, was ever truly part of the story?